It was 9:47 p.m. when Ibrahim Traoré received the emergency call from his media advisor. "Mr. President, you need to see Trump's Fox News interview immediately." As Traoré watched the American president mock him with racial slurs on live television, he didn't get angry, he got strategic. The 35-year-old African leader opened his laptop and began typing an email that would be read by 300 million people within 24 hours. What Traoré wrote in that email would not only expose Trump's most shameful secrets, but turn the racist attack into the greatest political boomerang in American history. By morning, Trump would be trending worldwide for all the wrong reasons. But to understand how devastating Traoré's revenge was, and how Trump's racist insults that night led to his own downfall, we need to go back to how it all began. That evening, Trump was sitting live on Fox News with Sean Hannity. The 2024 election campaign was heating up, and Trump had decided to target young African leaders. But when he mentioned Ibrahim Traoré, he was about to make a mistake no one could have predicted. "Sean," said Trump with his characteristic mocking smile, "do you know this kid, Ibrahim Traoré?" "The president of Burkina Faso, sir," Hannity asked. "President?" Trump laughed. "This kid is a jungle boy. He's playing president in Africa. He needs to learn what real leadership is." Viewers watching from the studio cameras noticed Trump's increasingly racist tone, but the real bombshell was yet to come. "These Africans," Trump continued, "they always ask us for help, but then they stand up to us. Ibrahim is one of them, a little jungle boy trying to be a big man." As the words jungle boy spread through television screens, no one realized this would be the biggest mistake of Trump's life. At that moment in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré was having dinner. When his phone rang, the urgency in media advisor Marie Caboret's voice put him on high alert. "Mr. President, I'm so sorry, but you need to see this immediately," said Marie. "Trump said very bad things about you on Fox News." When Traoré opened his laptop and started watching the live broadcast, Trump's words were still continuing. "These African leaders are really funny. They think they're equal to us. Someone like Ibrahim can't lecture America. He's just a monkey." Jumping from tree to tree, a deep silence fell over the room. Traoré's expression changed, but it wasn't the anger everyone expected. Instead, a cold smile slowly appeared. "Marie," said Traoré in a calm voice, "bring me the red folder." Marie's heart began racing. The red folder contained the most classified documents Traoré had collected about Trump. He hadn't touched that folder for months. "Mr. President, are you sure?" Marie asked. "I've never been more certain," Traoré replied, his eyes still focused on Trump, who was continuing his degrading speech on screen. In the Fox News studio, Trump continued his racist commentary about Africa. "This Ibrahim kid tried to threaten me, the President of the United States. Does he know who he is? He's just a child who came out of the wild." Even Hannity was starting to feel uncomfortable. "Mr. President, maybe we should—" "No, Sean," Trump continued. "It's time to speak the truth. These Africans need to learn civilization from us, especially this jungle boy called Ibrahim." At that moment, Traoré opened his laptop and began writing the email that would forever change American politics. But this wasn't just any ordinary response. Traoré had been waiting 6 months for something, for Trump to show his true face to the world, and now the perfect opportunity had knocked on his door. The email's subject line was simple: an open letter to Mr. Trump's jungle boy. But the content would become Trump's greatest nightmare. Traoré began writing, "Dear Mr. Trump, this evening you characterized me as a jungle boy. First, allow me to explain what a jungle is. A jungle is a place where the strong prey on the weak, exactly like what you do to Africa. But let me tell you something. If this jungle boy told you what he has on you, you wouldn't have spoken at all tonight." The first paragraph was just the beginning. Traoré's real plan went much deeper. When he opened the red folder, there were hundreds of pages documenting Trump's secret operations in Africa. But the most striking part was the recorded conversations from Trump's own mouth. "Africans are idiots," Trump was saying in a phone conversation recorded in 2019. "You can take whatever you want from them, give them a little money, and they'll immediately bow down." These recordings were just the beginning. Traoré had all the documents of Trump Organization's illegal mining operations, bribery payments, and environmental massacres in Africa. He continued writing his email. Mr. Trump, speaking of jungle, let me tell you how your company destroyed the forests in Congo. Between 2018-2021, Trump Organization's illegal cobalt mining destroyed 47,000 acres of forest environmental massacre, the work of your civilization. But most interesting are the words you said while approving these operations. Africans are savages anyway. A little more damage won't hurt. Traoré's fingers danced on the keyboard. Every word was calculated, every sentence a bomb that would end Trump's political career. On Fox News, Trump was still talking. These African leaders don't know that when I deal with them, I'm patient, because they haven't completed evolution yet. These words perfected Traoré's plan. Trump was condemning himself with his own hands. He began writing the most devastating section of his email. Dear Mr. Trump, speaking of evolution, the area where you haven't evolved is morality, because you can still practice racism today. But let me show you real evolution. At Veracruz, Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, and BBC will publish simultaneously. What will they publish? The audio recording where you said, Africans are idiots. Documents of environmental crimes committed by Trump Organization in 23 different African countries. Records of bribes you gave to African leaders. And most importantly, your 2020 plan to recolonize Africa. Traoré stopped and smiled. But the real bomb hadn't come yet. There's also a bonus, Mr. Trump. Alongside tonight's Jungle Boy speech, the world will see how all these documents look. People will understand that you're not just racist, but also a criminal. Welcome to the jungle, Mr. Trump. I'm the king here. When he finished his email, it was 11:47 p.m., but Traoré didn't send it yet. He needed to do a final check first. Calling. Marie, he said, are all the media organizations ready? Yes, Mr. President, Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, BBC, Reuters, they're all waiting. Good. They'll all publish simultaneously at midnight, Trump's racist words along with crime documents. But the most ingenious part of Traoré's plan was yet to come. Marie, one more thing. Do we have the video of Trump's speech tonight? Yes, sir, Fox News recordings. Add that video too. Let people first see Trump calling me Jungle Boy, then read about his crimes. The contrast will be perfect. As midnight approached, Traoré reviewed his email one last time. Then he pressed send. At the 0th second, the world's 25 largest news organizations began publishing the most striking news about Trump simultaneously. Washington Post, Trump's environmental crimes in Africa, first documents. New York Times, President's racist words and crime records leaked. CNN, Trump Organization's illegal operations in Africa. BBC, American President's Jungle Boy scandal. But the real bomb was that all the news started with Trump's racist speech from that evening. By morning, Dasha Jungle Boy Trump had become the #1 trend worldwide. Million Americans had heard Trump's racist words. But now 300 million people were also learning that he was a criminal. When Trump's phone started ringing at 6 a.m., it was already too late. The damage was done. The first call was from Republican Party leader Mitch McConnell. Donald, what the hell did you do? The party has completely collapsed. Then Trump's lawyers called. Sir, the Democrats are immediately starting impeachment proceedings. Are these documents real? The most painful was Melania's call. Donald, Barron and I are going to Florida. Don't call again. But Traoré wasn't finished yet. In the afternoon, he dropped the second bomb on the world. This time it was a video message. Dear world, said Traoré from the presidential office, last night Mr. Trump humiliated me as a jungle boy. Today I showed you who the real jungle is. Jungle is where the strong prey on the weak. Mr. Trump thought Africa was the jungle. It turns out the real jungle was the White House. The video was watched 500 million times in 24 hours. Trump's political career was over. His relations with Africa had collapsed. His party had abandoned him. But the most ingenious aspect of Traoré's revenge was using Trump's own words. No one could accuse Traoré of being aggressive. He had simply revealed the truth. 6 months later, Trump was impeached by Congress. The charges included environmental crimes in Africa and damaging the country's reputation with racist rhetoric. When Traoré spoke at the African Union, he said, "Trump thought I was a jungle boy. But who survives in the jungle? The smartest ones. And I was smarter than him." 1 year later, all of Trump's assets in Africa were nationalized due to environmental crimes. Total value, $2.4 billion. Racism comes at a high price, Traoré said in an interview. Trump learned that. But the story of how Traoré's strategic revenge unfolded was much more complex than anyone realized. Behind the scenes, the young African leader had orchestrated one of the most sophisticated political takedowns in modern history. The red folder that Marie had brought to Traoré that night contained far more than just documents about Trump's African operations. It represented months of careful intelligence gathering, strategic planning, and patience. Traoré had been building this case against Trump since the moment he took office, knowing that eventually the American president's true character would reveal itself. The beauty of strategic patience, Traoré would later explain to his intelligence team, is that you let your enemy destroy themselves. You just provide the stage. And what a stage he had provided. Within hours of the midnight document release, the political earthquake in Washington was unprecedented. Congressional Republicans who had staunchly defended Trump for years were suddenly calling for his resignation. The evidence was too overwhelming, the racist comments too damning, and the crimes too well documented to ignore. Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Trump's closest allies, was overheard telling colleagues, "We can't defend this. The man called African leaders monkeys while stealing from their countries. This is political suicide." But Traoré's masterstroke went beyond just exposing Trump's crimes. By timing the revelation to coincide with Trump's live racist rant, he had created a narrative so powerful that even Trump's most loyal supporters couldn't ignore it. The contrast was devastating. On one screen, Americans watched their president calling an African leader a jungle boy and a monkey, while on another screen, they read detailed evidence of how that same president had systematically exploited Africa for personal gain. It wasn't just about the crimes, political analyst Anderson Cooper noted on CNN. It was about the hypocrisy. Trump was calling Africans uncivilized, while his own companies were committing environmental genocide on their soil. The international reaction was equally swift and damaging. Within 48 hours, 17 African nations had expelled American diplomats and frozen all Trump Organization assets within their borders. The African Union unanimously condemned the United States and demanded Trump's immediate removal from office. But perhaps the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Trump's own Republican governors. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida was the first to break ranks. "The president's comments are indefensible. The evidence of criminal activity is overwhelming. I call on President Trump to resign immediately." Governor Greg Abbott of Texas followed. "This is not the Republican Party I joined. We cannot stand behind a leader who embodies everything we oppose." Even Fox News, Trump's most reliable media ally, began distancing itself from the president. Sean Hannity, who had conducted the fateful interview, issued a public apology. "I deeply regret providing a platform for the racist rhetoric we witnessed. This does not represent Fox News values." But Traoré wasn't content with just destroying Trump politically. He wanted to ensure that the lesson would resonate far beyond American politics. In a follow-up interview with BBC World Service, Traoré delivered what many would consider the most eloquent takedown of racism in political discourse. "Mr. Trump called me a jungle boy because he believes that the color of my skin determines the content of my character. But intelligence has no color, Mr. Trump. Dignity has no nationality. And justice is colorblind." The interview clip went viral, garnering over 1 billion views across all platforms. Dignity has no nationality became a global rallying cry for human rights advocates worldwide. Meanwhile, in Washington, the political machinery was moving with unprecedented speed. The House of Representatives voted to impeach Trump by a margin of 287 to 148, with 67 Republicans joining Democrats in voting for removal. The Senate trial that followed was unlike anything in American history. For the first time, a sitting president was being tried not just for domestic crimes, but for international war crimes. Senator Mitt Romney, serving as lead prosecutor, used Traoré's evidence to build an airtight case. The defendant didn't just steal from Africa, he destroyed their environment, corrupted their leaders, and then had the audacity to call them uncivilized. This is not just criminal behavior, this is moral bankruptcy of the highest order. The trial lasted 3 weeks, during which Traoré was called to testify via video link from Ouagadougou. His testimony was watched by an estimated 2 billion people worldwide. "Senators," Traoré said, looking directly into the camera, "I stand before you, not as a victim, but as a voice for justice. The man you are trying today didn't just insult me, he insulted the dignity of an entire continent. The evidence speaks for itself." The Senate vote was 73 to 27 for conviction, with 23 Republican senators joining all 50 Democrats in voting to remove Trump from office. Vice President Mike Pence was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States that same day. His first official act was to issue a formal apology to the African Union on behalf of the American people. "The words and actions of my predecessor do not represent American values," Pence declared. "We are committed to rebuilding our relationships with African nations based on mutual respect and equality." But for Ibrahim Traoré, the victory was about more than just personal vindication. It was about establishing a new paradigm for how Africa would be treated on the world stage. In his final statement on the Trump affair, delivered from the steps of the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, Traoré addressed not just Africa, but the entire developing world. "Today we have proven that dignity cannot be bought, respect cannot be demanded, and justice cannot be denied. We have shown that the color of your skin does not determine the power of your voice. And most importantly, we have demonstrated that in the modern world, truth is the most powerful weapon of all." The crowd of 100,000 people gathered in the square erupted in cheers that could be heard for miles. But beyond the celebration there was a deeper understanding of what had been accomplished. 3 months after Trump's removal from office, the Trump Organization's African assets were liquidated, and the proceeds, totaling $2.4 billion, were distributed to environmental restoration projects across the continent. The Ibrahim Traoré Environmental Foundation, established with these funds, became the largest conservation organization in Africa, dedicated to reversing the environmental damage caused by decades of exploitation. But perhaps the most lasting impact of what became known as the Jungle Boy affair was its effect on international diplomacy. African leaders, inspired by Traoré's example, began demanding equal treatment in all international forums. At the United Nations General Assembly 6 months later, Traoré delivered what many consider one of the most important speeches in the organization's history. "We gather here as equals, not as civilized and uncivilized, not as developed and underdeveloped, but as human beings with equal dignity and equal rights. The age of condescension is over. The era of exploitation has ended. The time of equality has begun." The speech received a standing ovation that lasted 15 minutes, with delegations from every continent joining in the applause. A year later, when asked by a journalist if he had any regrets about how he handled the Trump situation, Traoré's response captured the essence of his philosophy. "Regrets? The only regret I have is that it took so long for the world to see Trump's true character. But sometimes, the universe provides exactly the right moment for justice to prevail. Trump calling me a jungle boy was that moment." The journalist pressed further. "Do you think your response was too harsh?" Traoré smiled the same calm smile he had worn that night when he first heard Trump's insults. "My response was proportional to the injustice. Racism deserves to be exposed, crime deserves to be punished, and dignity deserves to be defended. I simply gave Trump's words and actions the audience they deserved." 2 years after the incident, a Hollywood movie was made about the events, titled The Jungle King. Ibrahim Traoré was portrayed by Academy Award winner Daniel Kaluuya, who spent 3 months in Burkina Faso preparing for the role. At the movie's premiere in Ouagadougou, the first Hollywood premiere ever held in Burkina Faso, Traoré was asked what message he hoped the film would convey. "I hope it shows young people around the world that intelligence and dignity are more powerful than money and racism," he replied. "I hope it demonstrates that in the modern age, truth travels faster than lies, and justice arrives sooner than we expect." The movie won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and Kaluuya's acceptance speech quoted Traoré directly, "This award belongs to everyone who has ever been underestimated because of their race, their nationality, or their circumstances." As President Traoré showed us, the real measure of a person is not where they come from, but where they're going. 5 years after the Jungle Boy affair, Ibrahim Traoré was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his contributions to international justice and racial equality. In his acceptance speech in Oslo, he reflected on the journey that had brought him there. 5 years ago, a man called me a jungle boy on television. He thought he was insulting me, but he was actually revealing himself. Today I stand before you not as a victim of racism, but as a victor for justice. The jungle taught me that the strongest survive not through force, but through wisdom. And wisdom, as it turns out, is the greatest equalizer of all. The audience at the Nobel ceremony included former Vice President Pence, who had traveled to Oslo specifically to witness Traoré's moment of triumph. After the ceremony, the two men shook hands and Pence offered his own reflection. President Traoré turned what should have been a moment of humiliation into a moment of liberation, not just for himself, but for an entire continent. He showed us that the power of dignity is greater than the power of hatred. But perhaps the most fitting epilogue to the entire affair came in the form of a simple thank you note that Traoré received 3 years after Trump's removal from office. It was from a young African-American girl in Detroit who had watched the entire saga unfold. "Dear President Traoré, my name is Aisha and I am 12 years old. When that bad man called you names on TV, I was so angry. But when you showed him that smart is better than mean, you taught me something important. You taught me that when people try to make you feel small, you should stand tall. When people try to make you feel weak, you should show them how strong you really are. Thank you for showing me that I don't have to accept it when people are mean to me because of my color. Thank you for teaching me that my brain is more powerful than their hate. I want to be a president like you someday, your friend Aisha." When Traoré read the letter, tears came to his eyes. He immediately wrote back, "Dear Aisha, you already are a president of your own destiny. Never let anyone convince you that you are less than what you know yourself to be. The world needs leaders like you. Your friend, Ibrahim." And in that exchange, between a world leader and a 12-year-old girl, lay the true victory of the Jungle Boy affair. It wasn't just about bringing down a racist president or exposing criminal behavior. It was about inspiring a generation to believe that dignity, intelligence, and justice would always triumph over hatred, ignorance, and corruption. Ibrahim Traoré. That night didn't just take down Trump. He built up the hope of millions of young people around the world who had been told they weren't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough to demand respect. And sometimes that's the most powerful revolution of all. The revolution that begins not with weapons or violence, but with a simple truth that every human being, regardless of race, nationality, or circumstances, deserves to be treated with dignity. Trump learned that lesson the hard way. The world learned it through watching his downfall. And Ibrahim Traoré, he had known it all along. That's what made him the real king of the jungle.